gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Political Smackdown. I'm Andy Deb and I'm your host this week. We got most of our semi-regular crew. We've got Ronnie Wetstein with us this week. He's filling in for Wes this week, who's traveling somewhere. I don't know where. Might be Twilight Zone for all I know this week. But Ronnie, it's good to have you with us. Former county commissioner, former Republican Party chair. And we got our semi-regular, Roger Harris, with us this week again. Betsy's still recovering from knee replacement. Hope she's doing well. But she's been sending a lot of texts, so she's been pretty busy, Mike. So I guess she's doing real well. But let's get started this week. Number one we have with us, of course, we got to talk about President Trump as always. He's always number one with us, I guess. This week, President Trump got two more of his controversial cabinet picks with Robert Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard by the skin of his teeth. But that still counts, they say with golf too, isn't that? And hand grenades and all that kind of stuff, Mike. Isn't that pretty much true? But what does this mean, though, and overall with the Trump agenda, though, Mike? I mean, Congress is pretty much giving pretty much what he wants so far, but he's got a head of steam, and it seems like he's going to be pretty hard to stop with most of what he wants.
He's got the highest approval rating by CBS poll this week of 53% that Donald Trump has ever had. I don't know how long it'll last, but you know, he wasn't very popular when he got elected the first time. I actually think Trump is going to get more done this time because he was out 4 years and what happened during that. But anyway, he's still got a big problem with a 1 or 2 or 3 vote, depending on the day, in the House of Representatives majority. And you're trying to herd those guys that are on the Freedom Caucus and get everybody on the Republican Party on the same page. That's not a slam dunk. The 53 in the Senate is a little more solid when it comes to the budget bill and economics. They'll probably get together, but you don't have any bigger majority right now in the House for Republicans than you do in the Senate, and it's a much slower percentage, so that's going to be a problem. But I want to just briefly hit on why he's getting these passed. He's getting them passed because of former Democratic Majority Leader Harry Reid. In 2013, he couldn't get his judges for Obama appointed, and in November of that year, they did what they call the nuclear option, and what since the 1960s had required 60 votes to do what they call cloture and bring something to a vote. Harry Reid did it and said, with 51 votes, we can pass cabinet level appointments and all judges below the Supreme Court. And Mitch McConnell, who's still there but probably ought not be, he said that night on the floor, you'll live to regret this maybe sooner than you think. So Andy, you know the rest of the story. When the Republicans got Donald Trump elected, they went to the nuclear option on the Supreme Court as well, and thereby Trump got 3 picks without a Democratic vote, or very few, if any. But these that are getting approved with 51 and 52 votes would never be approved if you still had the 60 vote rule. He'd have had to gotten somebody that was more centrist on some of them. So I overall think that it's not good not to have the 60 vote rule, but that's what led to this, was getting rid of the 60 vote rule.
Well, what's the old saying? What goes around comes around. So that's pretty much where we are right now. Well, Roger, it's kind of interesting what we've got. We've got one person that's got a worm in his head, and we got the person who's over our intelligence community that has a warm spot for dictators.
Right.
So, I mean, here we are.
It is, and you know, a president's cabinet is important. And we've seen presidents in American history that had exceptional cabinets, like Abraham Lincoln, and then we've had those presidents that had really poor cabinets, like Warren G. Harding. but in my judgment, this is probably the weakest and most inept cabinet in American history. And just to talk about one that you mentioned, Robert Kennedy, this is the man that has roadkill in his freezer and drinks raw milk and believes there's no such thing as a safe vaccine. Robert Kennedy has said that he believes that Wi-Fi causes cancer and something called leaky brain. He believes that antidepressants are the blame for school shootings. He believes that chemicals in the water supply turn children transgender. I wouldn't hire that man to teach a health occupations class at my high school. Any other time, he'd be a cartoon character. Caroline Kennedy told the world about him putting live chicks and mice in blenders and grinding those up. Every family, I think, including mine, has a crazy uncle, the one that everybody kind of nervously laughs at Thanksgiving. But the Kennedy's family crazy uncle is in charge of the nation's health. And I don't think it goes unnoticed. Mike has mentioned Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell was the only Republican to have the courage to vote against him. Mitch McConnell, who is a childhood polio survivor, who understands the value of public health. Any LPN at Shelby Hospital would be better qualified for HHS.
Ronnie, it makes you worry a little bit. I mean, all you gotta do is just Google him, and it's a little scary. I mean, there's some of the stuff, and I will say this, he has got some concerns about the diet of the American people. Now, he does have...
That may be legitimate,
and
absolutely.
He's got a concern, and he needs to start with the president's diet. I mean, really, and I got a sneaking suspicion he's probably not going to say a lot about it. I mean, I told Mike one time that he's probably going to make Big Mac a food group before it's over and said. But he's got a potential with that, but I think a lot of this other stuff's going to just swamp any potential good the man can do, because he's concerned, and when he talks about vaccine, the problem that a lot of people have had, they think that whatever the preservative is in a lot of these vaccines, he really thinks it's called autism. And he's not alone. There's a lot of people who've always had this issue, and even though it has been proven that it's not a problem, it does not call autism, but he's gone off on a lot of these tirades about stuff that is scary. And Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, Roger, we had her on our side. And,
yep.
I don't know, did we have to give her anything up when we traded her to the Republicans? We probably had to give some boot on that one, but...
we traded her for the Eagles offense.
But anyway, I mean, Ronnie, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, when President Trump was campaigning, he was campaigning to go in and upset the apple cart and try to look at everything and try to bring anything that wasn't quite right out there. Yeah. So I feel like that he had to put in a cabinet that wasn't status quo. And I don't think either one of these department heads will be able to go in and run roughshod and make everything the way they want it, because in life things you have to learn to compromise. Right. But I think that by putting in the people he did, it's going to shake up and make each department look at itself and figure out what do we really need to do and what's been good and what's been bad, because any group that you belong to, whether it's a church or a civic organization or a company, and the larger the company, the more waste and stuff you have going on, that there's a lot that can be made better. And sometimes it takes shaking up from the outside to make it better.
Well, and I agree with that. I mean, that's true. But they both have had some kind of outrageous things they've said that kind of trumps. I guess that word will work. That'll work. But just like RFK's stance about our diet. I mean, and that really is very much truthful. And I mean, Mike, that's always been one of your concerns too. We've had that conversation several times.
We are what we eat to a certain degree over time.
That's concerning too. I mean, but that it's a valid point that he could, and I think he has got some background that gives him some credibility with that. But my point is, this other stuff is just so crazy. It kind of just drowns out what he could do.
Well, your point's falling on deaf ears in the Republican Party. And all 52 of those people are not crazy. They have a reason for supporting Trump's person.
It's called a primary.
I don't know if I could have supported RFK or not for reasons different from even what y'all have talked about. Did you ever think you'd see a Republican HHS secretary that was pro-abortion?
No?
That's a newbie.
Yeah.
And I actually like Tulsi Gabbard. I think she's gotten a bad rap in a lot of ways. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. She will be different. She will be stern, but I don't think she's going to cuddle up to any dictator. You know, they accused Trump of cuddling up to Putin, but we didn't have any war while he was there with Russia that Russia was involved in Ukraine, and I got a feeling they'll get it worked out. Trump knows how to make deals, and he'll get some deals done that I think will be good. Some of them we won't agree with. I mean, I'm probably agree with 75 or 80% of policy things I've seen, but, you know, just think about, if you think these are good, wait till Kash Patel gets confirmed next week. And I can tell you right now, that's going to happen. And
Well, at first I would have disagreed, but after these two, I think the jury's been decided on this
that
one.
fella worked in that FBI, and you know what that FBI did to Trump, both with Hillary and after Trump was out. There's a lot of corruption that has been at high levels of the FBI, and that's going to get looked at, and it should be.
Well,
One of the things that I'm concerned about is there's so much talk about all this being close. But technically, the only race that was close was the one that J.D. Vance had to do for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, that he had to come in to break the tie. But even that was done early on before some of the senators that was chosen to be on the cabinet hadn't been replaced. So they didn't have quite enough people in there to make it happen.
You're right, but like before Ronald Reagan, cabinet members were routinely approved by either party with 80 and 90 Senate votes. That was routine before.
well, and I've always felt, and I've said here many times, a president should get their choices for cabinet unless they're just so out there crazy. And they should, because I mean, that elections happen, and they should get who they want, whether we like them or not. But if there's somebody like that Gates guy that I think everybody was in agreement had no business being Attorney General. He was so far out there it wasn't even shouldn't ever even come out.
That was Trump's sacrificial lamb.
Well, boy, but
Andy, then he appoints Pam Bondi, who only got like 6 Democrat votes, and she's a 2-term Florida, 3rd largest state prosecutor and attorney general.
And I didn't see anything that should have been a real problem with her. I mean, yeah, a lot of people didn't care for her politics, but that really didn't have anything to do with her qualifications.
I'm thinking she got 59 votes, which means 6 Democratic votes.
Yeah, something like that. And I agree with Ronnie. Policy differences, that's just routine. If you're the other party, you're going to have policy differences. Yeah. But a president ought to have the cabinet that he or she believes is going to serve him, but there has to be the caveat, it has to be a competent person.
Yes.
The differences in policy are not relevant.
No.
It ought to be a competent person.
And Ms. Bondi was competent. I don't think there's anybody had any
right.
real questions about that. And, you know, politics aside, she is competent to be the Attorney General.
That's right.
And, I mean, I don't think that was anything in question.
But Robert Kennedy, Lord
that
have mercy.
one's a little bit different. Well, folks, we've already burned up half the show already, but we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with the second half of Political Smackdown.
Chef Paul Prudhomme once said, "You don't need a silver fork to eat good food." Well, on Cleveland County Kitchen, we don't have a silver fork, but we sure do serve up lots of good food. Hi, I'm Deborah Blanton. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen. Each month, we offer a complete farm-to-table experience. We visit local growers, we learn about nutrition, and wrap things up with wonderful meals prepared by our guest chefs. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen.
And welcome back to Political Smackdown. Well, guys, as we record this on February 14th on Valentine's Day, today is the 25th anniversary of the disappearance of Aisha Degree. And let's be honest, nothing has haunted this county like this young girl's disappearance. And it's kind of like 9/11. Everybody kind of remembers where they were at on that day. And about in this past year in the fall, news broke that there was a break in this case, but nothing else since then has really happened. And, you know, Roger, this is kind of when something happens with a young child like that especially those of us that have had children, especially a daughter,
Right.
it really does sort of hit home with all of us. So, I mean, sort of what do you think? Thoughts on this?
It's hard to believe it's been 25 years, but
It really
it has.
is.
It just, so many questions and such a puzzle. A little 9-year-old girl just apparently gets up in the middle of the night and walks away from home and is never heard or seen from again. Some trucker saw her at 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning or something, and then they found her book bag 26 miles away, and but you know, so many questions.
In Burke County 2 years later.
That's right, and wrapped in trash bags or
Had
something.
two articles of clothing and something else in it that were not hers.
Yeah.
And that becomes important later.
It does, but you know, so many questions. Who took her? Why did they take her? And obviously the question is she still alive? You know, we don't know the answer to that question. If it were my family member, I would just have to believe that she's still alive. That would just be my instinct as a family member. And you know, there was some law enforcement activity last September that we hoped was going to bring some answers in the case, and nothing has been heard since then. But you know, these things happen from time to time. We remember Adam Walsh, the little 6-year-old boy in Florida that disappeared. But sometimes there are good outcomes that eventually come. J.C. Duggart was 11 years old when he was kidnapped in 1991, and he was held for 18 years and then was returned to his family. And probably the most extreme example was a California boy named Luis Albino. He was 6 years old when he was kidnapped in 1951, never heard from again until last year, 70 years later, and law enforcement finally found him and returned him to his family.
Wow.
So there is hope, and that's what we have for the Degree family. They have to hang on to hope.
That's it. Ronnie?
Anytime anything happens to any person in our county, it affects us, especially when it's something that's against a child, because I think everybody here has a warm spot for children in our county. And I've said for a long time that until we get the lowest child in this community up to doing better, then our county can't be all that it can be. We need to focus on our children and helping them become better, because as the children of our county become better, we all become better.
Absolutely.
Mike?
Well, Roger mentioned the book bag. It was found in Burke County along Highway 18, not far off of it, about 2 years after the event. And when they went out to the houses last September, and I think got a lot of hopes, well, obviously got a lot of hopes up, maybe there was something going to happen and it was going to be solved. Apparently, from what they said at the time, it had something to do with DNA that they found in the book bag, and they didn't have the technology until recent years to be able to trace DNA that was that old, and now they did. So we don't know what's going to happen. I'm not calling any names, even though the names are public, because I don't know what's going to happen. I do wish, I will say this, Andy, last year was the first time, and Alan Norman was the first sheriff whose department said they're now treating this as a homicide. And so they don't think that she's likely to be alive somewhere based on what they do have. So, but we don't know what they do have and don't have, and we don't know whether that was a dead end or whether there's still something to come and it just takes more time. So all the public can do is, if you believe in it, and I hope all of you do, say a prayer for that family that they'll get closure somehow, some way, soon.
And you can't help but feel for the Degree family, what they've gone through. I mean, it's just awful.
I sold the duplex they lived in to somebody 10 years or more ago. They've moved now, but then walked into that house, and the people knew we were coming that lived there, and it was Aisha Degree's mother. And I didn't know it when I went. I knew it was in that area, but the room at that time still looked like what you've seen on TV. But they have since moved.
I did not know they moved.
They have
Well,
moved.
they were holding out hope that she might come back at some
Yep.
point. Well, you can't help but just feel for the family. I mean, this is just an awful, awful thing, and you can't help but hope that at some point they will have a positive outcome. You can't help but hope that that will happen at some point. All right, moving on to our next question. Well, folks, it seems like Representative Tim Moore is not going to let the grass grow under his feet in Washington. This week, he found his way on All Things MSNBC's Morning Joe, no less, explaining the Republican budget. What is next? Is he going to guest host on The Voice? Ronnie, what do you think about that? Take off on that.
Well, Tim's always been, I've known him all of his life, and he's always been real political, and he always wanted to be out front and be in charge of everything that he can. So I think he's doing a good job. I had heard early on, and I'm assuming this because he had been Speaker of North Carolina, he actually has been acting Speaker in the House in one session. So I think he's going to do fine. He's going to work with everybody there, and then during all the Trump elections, he was really involved. North Carolina's always been a swing state and really strong in what's going on. So I think having connections and being around Trump a lot hadn't hurt him in what he's wanting to do. So I think Tim's going to do fine, and I guess we ought to all be proud that he's from Cleveland County.
Roger, I heard a rumor. He might be in the center square of Hollywood Squares next.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know what the man's up to. When he gets with Alan Langley, I understand Alan Langley was with him last week. No telling what's going to happen after that whenever he's there. I do enjoy watching Morning Joe. I watch part of the program. I'm certainly not going to sit there for the whole 6 hours, ever what it lasts.
And he was on the first hour.
He was. I was surprised to see Tim on the program yesterday. But the reality is that Tim's not your ordinary freshman congressman.
No.
This is not a Madison Cawthorn or anything like that. He's got a long, extensive history of politics in North Carolina, longest serving Speaker of the House. He's not part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene wingnut end of the party. I suspect he's probably got a tattoo on his chest that says, "I love gerrymandering." But beyond that, the reality is my team would like to have a Democratic congressman, but if we've got to have a Republican congressman, I just assume that person be from Kings Mountain in Cleveland County as anywhere else.
Well, that's the way I feel. Michael?
Well, as you know well, he's always been a good retail politician.
Oh, yes.
And he's also good in front of a camera.
Yep.
He's quick on his feet. He's got a quick mind.
Yep.
And he's not going up there to be a back row bench warmer for long.
Right.
Nope.
If Tim stays, and if Republicans stay in charge especially, I look for him to rise pretty quickly in Republican leadership by his second term. Don't mean Speaker of the House by his second term, but I think he'll be chairing committees, and I just think you're going to see him. And I would not say it's impossible for him to someday be Speaker of the House, but boy, there's a lot that happens outside of North Carolina. First, you got to have a majority, and we don't ever know who's going to have a majority in the House anymore.
Yep.
It's going to change from election
And
to
it's
election,
still
it
tight.
looks like, but it's tight. But
And he
Tim
may-
will do well, and I wasn't totally shocked to see him, but I think he showed this, Andy. He won't just go to Fox or Newsmax. He'll go to wherever as long as they give him an opportunity to explain the Republican point of view.
Yep.
And he may be wanting to go to the other end of the Capitol at some point. Who knows?
You never know.
There's a Senate over there.
I still think he thought Mika was going to interview him. All right, it is time for a lightning round. Roger, what you got for us?
Donald Trump claimed during the campaign that he was going to cut grocery prices. And he focused a lot about the price of eggs and talked about the price of eggs. Here's a direct quote. He said, "When I win, I will immediately bring down prices starting day one." Well, now we know 1 month into office, the price of eggs nationally has gone up 15% since Donald Trump took office. But here's the truth. It is not Mr. Trump's fault. Neither was it Mr. Biden's fault last year when eggs went up. The avian flu was responsible for the deaths of 40 million egg-laying chickens last year. If you got fewer chickens, you have fewer eggs, which increases cost. they lied to you. They knew better, and they lied anyway. And now they're telling you that the $4.5 trillion tax cut is going to benefit everybody equally. Right.
Ronnie, what you got for us?
I want to give a little bit of information because a lot of times there's things that goes on in the county that we sort of know, but we don't know. And something that I think most people in the county probably don't know is that we have 136 elected officials in both parties. That's the combination of both parties in our county. And how did that happen? Well, we have 15 municipalities, and with 15 municipalities, you got a mayor and several people, anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 city councilmen or city council persons, I should say. You also have the school board, the water board, the soil and water, judges, register of deeds, sheriff, district attorney, commissioners, 2 House members, and 1 North Carolina senator, and 1 U.S. House member from Cleveland County. So that's 136 different people. So that's a lot of people in our county that are involved in making this county run. And if anybody out there has ever thought about, would I like to be part of that, then all you have to do is you can talk to Clifton over at the Board of Elections, and they'll set you in the right direction. But you could start with any municipality on a council, then go up to county level or state level, or maybe even one day run for president. It'd be great if we had a president from Cleveland County.
Well, or you could just run into a concrete wall and it'd be about the same effect. All right, Mike, what you got for us?
Well, to our public, if you haven't gotten your notice from Cleveland County yet about your new property values, you're going to get them by the time probably you see this. They were mailed on Wednesday the 12th, more or less, and they're online right now. Brace yourselves, and we'll probably have this as a topic very soon on Political Smackdown. It's going to be the largest increase, I think, since 1980, when it had been 8 years. I'm talking about in terms of actual value. And if y'all remember that, Roger, you and I and Ronnie are old enough to remember the Born Free Tax to Death movement in Cleveland County in 1980 with Phil Mays and a few other people, if you're old enough to remember that. Don't know that that'll happen this time. I know commissioners at least are dedicated to lowering the rate as much as they can, so don't get overly alarmed about the value till you learn more.
Well, happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing I've got, there's an ugly divorce going on in California. Imagine that. Chevron, after 140 years, is leaving California, and they are going to Texas, of all places. The president of Chevron sent a text to Governor Newsom and said, I was wanting to talk to you about what we're leaving. Governor Newsom's reply is, I don't need to talk to you about it. I'm good. So that's what 140 years to get you from the governor of California. That's all we got this week. Hope you've learned a little bit of something, and we'll be back again next week with a new edition of Political Smackdown.